Welcome to MACC Talk, a Middle Tennessee podcast from Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'm Barry Ellis, Chairman of the Board of Directors at Mont Haven. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Design Fabrications in Hendersonville.
Thank you, Barry, and welcome everyone to MACC Talk. I'm your host, John Pitcher. We like to think of Mont Haven as a cultural town square where we encourage everyone to be their creative best. Barry, I think a lot of people think of you as a local businessman and a board director, but they don't know that you're also a pianist and musician. It's very exciting. So now I have to ask you, what sort of creative things have you been doing as a pianist or a musician or as a non-businessman this week?
Well, thanks for asking, John. My creative outlet was recently, I was listening to a reel that was playing in the background, and they had, unfortunately, I didn't get to see who the creator was, but discussing why jazz musicians do repetition in their scales and their exercises that they do. And it's what his explanation was is they practice them over and over and over again, and the idea is that it's meant to be boring to help encourage going off and improvising or doing something different with it, which is a very different route than the classical training where you are trying to really perfect exactly how that scale is supposed to go. You're not deviating from it much, and you might change dynamics or maybe some of the rhythmic motifs just to be able to work on how one finger goes to another, but it's very strict. And so getting this idea of, it's to lead to something more creative was great. And so I've been using that this week to work on some of the pieces that I've been playing around with some Scott Joplin rags and experimenting when I repeat them and have different sides to do a little bit more improvisation, something that is very difficult for me. So it's encouraged me to be more creative, to work more on that side of repetition.
Okay. Well, maybe that explains why some of those older classical piano exercises were actually kind of boring, like Czerny and Hannon and all that stuff, because they were, in those days, classical musicians improvised. That's just like jazz players. And they were figuring, Hannon or Czerny were probably thinking, if I make this really dreadfully boring and redundant and repetitive, maybe these guys will go off and actually learn how to improvise.
That's kind of
that was Mozart's stock and trade, right?
Idea that I was going like, I wonder if that's kind of some of what they were looking at as well, going, should we have, maybe they'll get through this and they'll go, let me put a little bit of a different spin on this, C etude that, of Czerny or
Franz Liszt took those Czerny etudes and turned them into the transcendental etudes.
Exactly.
And then you can't really improvise that stuff.
And you can see Franz Liszt, the transcendental etudes that he has and how they kind of work through. I've got a great collection of some of the ones that were, it's like the easier ones, which are not easy, the more a little bit moderate, and then the full ones that we know and love that are just incredibly difficult to play.
Yeah, they're sort of impossible. Well, Barry, I think since you are a classical music fanatic, you're going to be excited about this week's guest. Giancarlo Guerrero is the 6-time Grammy Award-winning conductor and music director of the Nashville Symphony Orchestra. Since picking up the baton in 2009, Guerrero has led the Nashville Symphony in 11 world premieres and 15 recordings of American music. Last summer, Guerrero surprised everyone when he announced that the 2024-25 season would be his last in Nashville. So we are thrilled that he's here with us today to talk about his time in Nashville and his future plans. Giancarlo Guerrero, welcome to MACC Talk.
Thank you, John. Great to see you.
You've been music director of the Nashville Symphony since 2009. What prompted you to make the 2024-25 season your last season here?
Well, by this time, I feel that I have achieved everything that I've dreamt as a music director of such a fabulous orchestra in such a great city. And post-pandemic, there was kind of also for me, a personal realization that perhaps it was time for me to move on, and for the Nashville Symphony also to move on into their next chapter. One big part of this decision also was related to family. Both my daughters, who grew up in Nashville, are now out of the house, and the last one about to graduate college. So my family and I felt that Nashville in many ways has kind of served its purpose of raising our kids and having a base of operations. But honestly, at this point in my career, I am actually very excited about what the future brings for me personally. I am spending much more time in Europe now. And as I said, I feel that at this moment, pretty much the musicians know all my jokes by now. And I think it may be time for some sort of rejuvenation with the institution and myself as well. So I felt that this was the right time to move on after of so many great, wonderful successes over my time here.
Okay, speaking of successes, I just heard you conduct an amazing Mahler 10th. And you're opening and closing your next season with Mahler. What makes Mahler so indispensable to you and to the Nashville Symphony?
I've always had a very deep connection with Gustav Mahler as a not only as a conductor, but especially the way that he writes his music with every single emotion that he's not afraid to show in every note that he composes. But Mahler is particular to me just also because of the fact that he's the only composer that I can think of whose entire repertoire is in the standard repertoire of all orchestras all over the world. At some point, every single one of his symphonies or his song cycles is being played somewhere. And not even Mozart or Haydn can say that. I mean, I always say, well, I don't know much about Haydn's, Symphony number 18 or Mozart's Symphony number 17. But Mahler, with the few works that he has, is the only composer that I can think of whose entire works are in the standard repertoire. So there must be something about the way that he composes that has great relevance, not only to orchestras, but to audience members as well. So because of that, it is always, for me, very enjoyable to champion his music. For orchestras, it's a lot of fun to perform. And for audiences, you can never get enough of it. So I feel that throughout the seasons, not only here in Nashville as a guest conductor, I have to have Mahler spread out throughout his symphonies and his song cycles because I find it immensely rewarding when I get to do his music.
Yeah, and just to make note, I believe you're beginning next season with the Fifth Symphony and ending it with the Symphony of 1000.
That is correct. And the Symphony of 1000 we did about 10 years ago, soon after the flood. And it is called the Symphony of 1000 because one thing that Mahler liked was grandiosity, and this is a symphony that requires a lot of forces. But for me, it is a very appropriate way to finish my tenure here as music director of the Nashville Symphony because it becomes almost like a community effort with so many singers from in the chorus that make up our community here in Nashville, but as well a very, very large orchestra. And it's such a celebratory piece that I really wanted to go out, I guess, with a big bang.
Okay. Well, I think if memory strikes me correctly, I believe that you ended your first season here with Mahler's Fifth. You're beginning your last season with Mahler's Fifth. So you're coming full cycle.
It looks like I'm full cycle. And here's the other thing that I find also remarkable is that by now, since I did the 10th Symphony a few weeks ago, I have done now all of the symphonies from 1 to 10 with the Nashville Symphony. And I know that this is a great degree of pride from the players in the orchestra that can now all say that they have played all of the symphonies of Gustav Mahler, because not many ensembles can claim that. And I am very honored that during my time here, we were able to explore all of these incredible, as I call them, individual Mount Everest of wonderful music.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of your first season here as music director, I went back and looked over the program, and I was interested to note that I think that there was only one work by a woman composer played over the entire season. Next season, I counted 6 women composers, 5 composers of color, and I'm just wondering, how important is that kind of diversity for the future of classical music?
I think that it is about time that we adjusted to the realities of how the world is changing. And the fact that, as you mentioned, 15 years ago, one woman composer was probably enough and nobody raised any issues about it. And I am now very honored that in the times that we're living in 2024, we could not imagine not having female or African American composers. So we've come a long way. I do think that there's still a lot of work to do in the future, but the fact that we are expanding the repertoire and including more people that deserve to be included, not just go into this kind of tunnel vision that we just keep doing the same old, same old, same old, we will become museum pieces eventually. So I am truly delighted that over time, the classical music business, if you want to call it that, has come to the realization that we have been incredibly derelict in championing the voices of every composer, regardless of their background or their genre or their race. And that is something that I am very, very proud, and I have made a commitment myself, just because I guess I'm a very curious person musically, that I am constantly looking for new voices. And now that I have discovered all of these new great female composers, African-American composers, also not only from the United States, but from all over the world, has been, I have to say, one of the most rewarding personal projects, because I am now able to even program more creatively. And as I said, we're not there yet, but I am very happy to see that there is a recognition that we can do better, and we are trying to do better. And conductors like myself, it is our responsibility to expose our audiences to these voices. So that is something that I am immensely proud of, and I am sure that the next music director of the Nashville Symphony will continue with this trend for the future as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm also was thrilled in looking at your program next season to notice that you've got many of the great classics in there. I remembered having a conversation a few years ago with the pianist Garrick Olson. He was about to play the Emperor Concerto somewhere, and he was kind of wondering, is this really relevant anymore? And hearing that from Garrick Olson, I think he was just having one of those moments. And I said, Garrick, there's going to be one or two kids in that audience who've never heard the Emperor Piano Concerto before, and it's going to change their lives. That kind of thing happened to me.
Absolutely right. And we like to look to the past and the great classics of Beethoven, Mozart, Brahms, Stravinsky, Bach. But it is when we put these works with the voices of today, with the composers of today, whether it's Jennifer Higdon or Florence Price or John Adams, that this music has a tendency to sound fresh again. Mm-hmm. And that is, to me, what the combination of the programming can really bring out, when you bring a piece that perhaps you think you know, but then under the new circumstances, the piece maybe has a chance to sound fresh again.
Yeah.
If I really wanted the piece to sound the same way, that's why I have my recording. I program these Mozart symphonies again, and I program these Brahms symphonies again, because in this day and age, there may be a chance for me to listen to them or approach them in a very different way. So they will always be relevant. Just as the same things that inspired Mahler or Beethoven back in their days, or the things that they feared, or the things that they had, apprehensions about, things haven't changed much in that regard. Back in the day, those composers had to deal with tragedies, and they had to deal with political turmoil, and they had to deal with wars, and they had to deal, with family situations. It's the same as what's happening nowadays. That hasn't changed much. Maybe the information gets delivered much quicker, but in the deeper aspects of what makes music relevant, or what moves us, really hasn't changed all that much. And I truly believe that that's why this music is eternal.
We're speaking with Giancarlo Guerrero, music director of the Nashville Symphony. We'll be right back after this important message.
Design Fabrications in Hendersonville reminds parents to encourage your students to get involved in both art and athletics. Engaging in art as well as physical activity elevates your mood and stimulates your brain. The ability to balance creative expression with teamwork and discipline is a valuable asset in today's multifaceted world. Design Fabrications, specializing in custom artistic pieces in brass, stainless, and steel.
We're back with Nashville Symphony conductor and music director Giancarlo Guerrero. Well, the Nashville Symphony is probably best known around the world for its Grammy-winning recordings. You've got quite a few here. The orchestra next season is recording music by Mason Bates and Julia Wolfe and Kip Winger. And I'm just wondering, why is Nashville so committed to contemporary American music?
New music comes very naturally to me, and maybe because I am a very curious person. As I said before, I love the classics of Beethoven, Brahms, and Stravinsky and Tchaikovsky. But at the same time, I am always eager to discover the voices that are writing the music as we speak, the music of our times, which is a time capsule of what's happening in our world. But I've always also thought that there is a very specific thing that is associated with Nashville just because of the fact that we're known worldwide as Music City. But when you really think about it, it is American Music City. The music that gets promoted here, it's really American. When you have not only country music, whatever that is anymore, I mean, obviously that has changed as a genre, but when you think of all of the jingles and you think of blues and rock and roll and everything that gets published, performed, recorded here in Nashville, when we're doing it in our genre as classical music, it just feels like completely natural in a town like this. And I do believe that that's one of the main reasons, that because we have an audience that is so steeped in music, that everybody in this town is somehow related to the music business in some way, shape, or form, directly or indirectly, that has given us, I think, a very sophisticated audience that really appreciate the idea of listening to the voices of today. Plus, for me, it has not only been about just playing the music and letting it go away. The fact that not only do we commission these pieces and we record them and for the future, so future generations can actually enjoy this music, but we have brought every single one of these composers to Nashville as well. So in many ways, the city and its audiences can take ownership of this music. Just the way that back in the day, Kusevitsky with the Boston Symphony, when he was championing the composers of his day, Prokofiev and Ravel and Bartok and Stravinsky, I wish I could say I invented the wheel. I didn't. I'm just doing exactly what my predecessors have done. And I have to say that this is one of the things that I am the most proud of, that there is actually a legacy that we can look at in the Nashville Symphony, not only in the commissions, but on the recordings that have made this music even more available to other audiences all over the world. And more importantly, I truly believe that this will be the pieces that in the future will be the Beethovens and the Stravinskys in the next decades.
Mm-hmm. You've been here for quite a long time. You've done a lot of ambitious projects. What do you think your most ambitious project has been? The one that comes to my mind is Violins of Hope.
Violins of Hope was a very special project just because it involved the whole community by bringing these instruments, which were witnesses to a very, very dark period in the world, but having them kind of be resident here in the city, and people could actually see them and understand and hopefully reflect on what these instruments really represented. Plus, the commission of the piece that we did with Jonathan Leshnov is something that I have to say was very, very moving. And it was something that didn't happen just on your normal weekend of concerts. This went on for several weeks with the instruments being on display at the public library. And then having the luthier himself, the person that kind of has been gathering, being here and telling us about it and sharing the history behind every single one of these instruments, which they have a story to tell. The other project that I have to say that I was probably one of the craziest was when we did the professional premiere of the Charles Ives Universe Symphony, which involved pretty much putting 6 orchestras together with 5 conductors, with click tracks and computers, and we took that to Carnegie Hall. I know that every single time that we think of any big things that we're doing nowadays, we always say, well, at least it's not the Universe Symphony, because that really pushed the orchestra, not only as artistically, but institutionally, into something really, really large. And the fact that Charles Ives, to me, is one of those composers that we haven't caught up to him. Charles Ives is still 500 years ahead of us. So his music is so immensely creative, and the way that he thinks of art and music has always fascinated me. And the fact that we were able to pull this off, not only in Nashville, but bring it to Carnegie Hall, is something that really showcases the flexibility and the ambition of the Nashville Symphony.
What has been your most memorable concert here, do you think? Was it Carnegie Hall or was there a different concert?
Sometimes people ask me, what my favorite piece of music is. And sometimes if you ask me, what my favorite concert is or may have been, I have to be honest that it's almost like asking me who's my favorite daughter. But there are 2 concerts that to me kind of stand out just because of the emotional aspect of it. And they're both related to the flood, which was probably the biggest existential threat for the symphony when the hall flooded soon after it opened in 2006, and then 2010, we all remember. And this was truly an existential threat to the orchestra. The idea that the building could be permanently damaged, And I remember being in the hall doing auditions as the rain was coming down. And I was hearing about, water getting into the basement, but we didn't think much of it. And then by the next day, the whole basement was completely flooded, and the building was in great peril. And we had a concert scheduled that was, of course, canceled because of everything was going. People couldn't get out of their neighborhoods even, and this whole downtown area was underwater. But yet we managed at the very last minute to put a concert together in front of the state capitol. Just we decided to just, at this moment, people needed music. And so we put this great concert for the people, free, and just whoever could make it. We were going to play music and hopefully try to bring some degree of solace and some degree of hope, because it was a very, very, very difficult time for everybody here in Nashville. And that was very special, seeing how many people came out, and Nashville was not going to be stopped. And the Nashville Symphony, of course, even though our hall was underwater, we were not going to be stopped. And we were going to continue our main mission of bringing music to our audiences. And fast forward about 8 months later, when after the hall went through a big renovation and we managed to save it, on December 31st, we had our great opening night or reopening with Itzhak Perlman, who very graciously came to play for that. And having those two performances of being in a very dark time and a very unstable, not really knowing what was going to happen to all of us in terms of like even our livelihoods, whether the symphony was going to be able to survive and how would we survive. And then December 31st, a few months later, of course, here we were back with not only the great work of our institution, but our community who rallied around the symphony, and with their great support and generosity managed to bring us back. And so for me, those two concerts, because of what they represented as a community effort, I think of high regard, because it told me everything I needed to know about what Nashville is all about. And this community was not going to let the Nashville Symphony, disappear. And here we are, thriving better than ever.
Absolutely. We're speaking with Giancarlo Guerrero, music director of the Nashville Symphony. We'll be right back after this important message.
Design Fabrications in Hendersonville reminds parents to encourage your students to get involved in both art and athletics. Engaging in art as well as physical activity elevates your mood and stimulates your brain. The ability to balance creative expression with teamwork and discipline is a valuable asset in today's multifaceted world. Design Fabrications, specializing in custom artistic pieces in brass, stainless, and steel.
We're back with Nashville Symphony conductor and music director Giancarlo Guerrero. We talked before we sat down to record a little bit about the great Gustav Mahler, and about how every orchestra that he conducted now considers itself to be a Mahler orchestra. We have Gustav Mahler standards, which makes me wonder, what do you feel has been your biggest accomplishment here? When I think about you, I think about you conducting an orchestra that can pick up the most unfamiliar, brand new piece of music. Ink hasn't even dried yet, and they can give a brilliant performance.
I do have to say that my greatest joy and my greatest happiness I've had with this orchestra has been standing in front of the musicians. From the very beginning, that is what captivated me when I first came here to conduct my first time. There was a special chemistry connection with them, and over the years, that relationship has grown as musicians have retired and new players come in. It's the job of the music director is nurturing. The job of the music director, in my opinion, more than just conducting the concert, is the training of an orchestra. Like you train a football team, and you train those muscles with every rehearsal and with every performance. You build and create higher degrees of artistry. But I couldn't do any of it if the players themselves were not invested into the process as well. And from the very beginning, this is one of the most outstanding and virtuoso group of musicians I have ever encountered. And I am immensely honored not only to call them my colleagues, but to now call them my friends as well. And over the years, getting to know them and getting to know their families has been a great source of joy personal joy for me because even after these many years with them, I still feel that magic is still there. I still feel that every time I stand in front of the orchestra, there's always this great, I guess, sense of discovery that even if we are doing a piece, for the third or fourth time with me, that perhaps we want to approach it from a very, fresh way, that maybe we can play it in a different way. This week we're doing Carmina Burana, which is a piece we've done several times. But even last night when I was rehearsing with the choir, which is another great source of pride for me, how we've developed this incredible ensemble as well. I was surprising them with new ideas. So that to me is what it is all about, that we never should get into this sense of routine, that there should always be a sense of adventure in everything that we do. And as I said before, honestly, my relationship with the musicians over the years has been, for me, the greatest and most happy times that I have is being on the podium. And I do look forward that when I finish officially as music director, that yes, I will continue coming back. I just cannot give it up. I have way too much love and too much part of my life, not only with the Nashville Symphony, but with Nashville as a community. And this is where my kids grew up. This is where my kids went to school. And we have made so many friends and people that we just love over the years. And I look forward to coming back and seeing, from the sidelines, the next chapter of the Nashville Symphony.
Yeah. Is there anything that you have not done with the Nashville Symphony that you wish you could have done?
At this point, I mean, with all of the recordings and the programming that we have done of all the composers, I think we have championed pretty much everyone, maybe some more than others. But honestly, for me, because the world is changing so fast, I couldn't even tell you what the programming of any other orchestra in the next 2 years may be, because we are moving very fast. Orchestras are having to reposition themselves in their own communities. So I am sure that as I am looking at the landscape for the future, that I would have had to come and be even more creative about what I would need to do, whether that involves more recording, whether that involves streaming live on video, who knows? But we do know that orchestras nowadays, as what you mentioned before, now having female composers, African-American composers, that's just part of it. The world is changing quite rapidly in a way that orchestras are having to really continue to answer the question, what is our role in our communities? We cannot just continue looking back and playing just old music and people will just keep coming back. That's not how it's working. There's a lot of competition, particularly here in Nashville. There's so much great music happening here on an hourly basis of great quality, by the way. So how does the Nashville Symphony remain relevant in Nashville in 2025, 26, 27? So of course, there's always things to continue. I don't think I could ever think, but whatever, I had this dream of doing something in 2019. It's a different world. It's probably no longer relevant. So I need to start thinking about what can I do now to make sure that in 3 years, the symphony is not only relevant, but more importantly, thriving.
I think you've been doing it because one person whose job is to know what all American orchestras and North American orchestras is doing is the editor of American Record Guide. And he tells me year in and year out, Nashville, you guys have the most adventurous concert program for the whole season.
You're absolutely right. And that is, as they say, the facts speak for themselves. But that is a reflection of not only the virtuosity of the orchestra, but it is a reflection of the sophistication of the audience. The fact that I have been able to feel that here I can get away with that, and that audiences will feel that there is a purpose behind this, and it's a purpose that is bigger than all of us. It's not just playing this music for now. It's something that over the years people are going to look back and say, what was going on in Nashville in this time that not only the orchestra was doing this, but the community was going along with it, and they were supporting this. And I know that we are every living composer's favorite orchestra just because we are championing their work.
And from their point of view, this is also a great chance for them to get a Grammy Award.
On top of that, which is, as I said, it's 6 for me now. And because of the pandemic, we were a little bit slowed down. And now we have about 7 recordings that we have already done that we need to figure out how we're going to release them. So obviously, so there's going to be a lot of great recordings coming out of the Nashville Symphony of stuff that was kind of delayed because of the pandemic, but we have them queued up and ready to go, and a lot of great voices, a lot of composers, great music, and that one I'm excited because I feel that even after I am gone officially as music director, they're still part of my legacy that will continue for the next years as these recordings get released.
We're speaking with Giancarlo Guerrero, music director of the Nashville Symphony. We'll be right back after this important message.
Design Fabrications in Hendersonville reminds parents to encourage your students to get involved in both art and athletics. Engaging in art as well as physical activity elevates your mood and stimulates your brain. The ability to balance creative expression with teamwork and discipline is a valuable asset in today's multifaceted world. Design Fabrications, specializing in custom artistic pieces in brass, stainless, and steel.
We're back with Nashville Symphony conductor and music director Giancarlo Guerrero. Well, just time for one more question. You've sort of touched upon this a little bit, but what are your plans after 2025? Are you thinking about being a guest conductor? Is there sort of going the Leonard Bernstein route? Or are you thinking about is there another orchestra in your future somewhere? What do you think?
So from the very beginning, I have been a music director. Before I came here, I was in Eugene, in Venezuela. I was a music director.
And you've been a music director in Europe, too.
And I've been a music director in Europe in two different orchestras. And there's a part of me that I would like to enjoy free agent status for a while. Mm-hmm. Being a free agent, I always say as a guest conductor, it's almost like dating. You come in and you have a wonderful week with the orchestra, and then you go away and come back maybe the year or 2 years after. And you don't have to make any tough decisions. It's all about music making. It's not the actual administrative job of being a music director and everything that entails. So there's a part of me that is actually very excited about that prospect of not only doing guest conducting with orchestras that I know and that I go back to almost on a yearly basis, but also getting to make new friendships, getting to know different orchestras. And everybody always says, there's a saying in our business that the music director search starts the minute that you hire your new music director. You're always looking for that next person, And I have myself been through music director searches in the past, but they can be like a beauty pageant. Sometimes they're not as fun as they sound because you're coming in, especially if it's an orchestra that you know well, and because you're going through this kind of almost competition, it doesn't feel very natural. I'm here in the business of doing music. So for me, of course, I leave the door open, never say never that I'm not going to become a music director. Who knows? I may go up to an orchestra and fall in love. That's what happened to me in Poland. I went there on a cancellation and I conducted. I fell in love with the orchestra, with the city, with the institution. And what do you know? They were looking for a music director and boom, there I was. So for me, at this moment, honestly, there is nothing in the horizon just because I wanted to keep this idea with my management that I wanted to keep an open schedule and hopefully reconnect not only with old friends, but also make new friendships with new ensembles, maybe do more opera, which requires more weeks out of my calendar, which because of my music directorship in the States and in Europe, I couldn't find 5 or 6 weeks to do this. But now that I will have this, I will want to pursue more opera projects, which also make me happy. So we'll see. Maybe in the next couple of years, I will go to a particular orchestra and the sparks may fly and I may become music director again. But for the time being a guest conductor excites me a lot because it will be like not only a lot of traveling to great, great, beautiful places around the world, but making music with basically no other strings attached. Just all about the music.
Okay. Well, Giancarlo Guerrero, music director of the Nashville Symphony, thank you for speaking with us, but more importantly, thank you for being here since 2009 and really making this, for me, the most exciting orchestra in the entire world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And again, thank you for all of your great support over my many years as music director in this orchestra.
Thank you so much, sir.
You've been listening to MACC Talk from Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center. Our mission is to educate, elevate, and encourage our community through the transformative power of the arts. If you're interested in transforming your creative life, check out our website at monthavenarts.org. Our guest today was Giancarlo Guerrero, Music Director of the Nashville Symphony Orchestra. Our podcast music was written by Nashville composer Christina Spinay. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.